Mistake on the ladies and gentlemen. What's up? Coming at you once again. It is your world famous, everyone's favorite podcast. That's already been established over the last 179 episodes of Keepin It Rio. Today, folks, episode 180. And I went out and found myself an absolute superstar, legend, a hero to millions, and just one of the good guys in the industry who is a well-known person in the commercial side of roofing, but maybe not so much on residential. A lot of my friends are on the residential side because we haven't made it that far yet. And I'd like to introduce my friend to all of you guys today. So without any hesitation, it is the one and only coming out of Houston, Texas. It is Ian Wilson. You've got like 6 different companies, but you're the CEO of many, I will say, and one of the greatest guys I know in this industry. So Ian, first off, thanks for being on Keepin It Rio, my friend. And I appreciate it. Why don't you tell our fans a little bit about what's going on with you today?
Well, first of all, thank you for that very grandiose introduction. I appreciate that very much.
I go big with the podcast.
Yeah, no, almost 35 years in the roofing business now. Started out as a 2-year break. I was going to go to law school at the University of Texas, and I had taken my LSAT and got accepted and decided I was tired of being poor and I wanted to work for a couple of years to save some money for law school. I got into roofing as a temporary deal. I started out as a shingle rep. So I was deeply entrenched in the residential business and have a whole bunch of guys that are in the industry now that I brought into the business and sort of evolved into more of a commercial company. We represent about 17 different manufacturers now. We do have some residential products, underlayments, clay tile, slate, metal, very niche, specialty, high-end residential products, and then some commodity underlayments and ventilation products and things like that. But for the most part, my love is things that require high level of technical expertise. We do consulting for building owners. We write specifications for architects, and we just have a very broad group of services we offer to help really promote our products in the marketplace. And so we sell through distribution, but our focus is contractor oriented. At the end of the day, that's who needs to be taken care of. If you're a rep that's not spending your time really catering to the contractors and adding value there, then you're just an order taker. And we want to add value and partner with contractors, and everything else kind of takes care of itself. Not to minimize distribution, they're a very important part of our business. But the contractor is the key, and our job is to take care of the contractor. The building owner, we write specs for hundreds of building owners all over the country, and that allows us to bring leads to our contractors as well.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point of the game, right? I love what you say about the contractors being the focal point, because I was in distribution for 15 years before I got into contracting. And I couldn't agree with you more. I would have never had 15 years on that side had there not been contractors for me to focus on. And I think that's crucial with your company. I know recently, I want to say like maybe earlier this year, the beginning of the year, you went through a rebranding.
We did.
And I was wanting to ask you about that because I was curious. After you've had your brand for several years, like you said, going on 30 years or what have you in the industry, what was the thought process behind changing your brand at this stage of the game? And what kind of process did you have to deal with as far as going from an established name and logo into something that's not as established, but it's still basically the same?
Yeah, it was a hard decision for us to make, but I made a commitment about 8 years ago to kind of change the way that I did business and kind of call it a litmus test or a beta test to figure out how we could kind of change the way that we do business. And I modeled it briefly on sort of the way that we did our residential business. When I was a shingle rep, we went to the builders and we got to know them on a very, very first name friendly basis, where we were calling on guys who ended up becoming the CEOs of major national builders. I was calling on guys that became the CEO of Trendmaker Homes when he was a purchasing agent. And we became good friends, and they just elevated through the business and kind of brought us with them. And, we would just bypass calling on the back then, the roofers were all kind of labor guys working for the builder, and they were doing it piecemeal. And we were sort of the catalyst that sort of changed the industry over to turnkey, where the builder wasn't buying the materials and the roofers were doing it turnkey. We went in and said, hey, we can help you guys. Why are you buying materials and using these guys who are stapling shingles on and they're blowing off? And so we became really good friends with all the major home builders who went from building, 200 houses a year to 20,000 houses a year. And so that was sort of my first kind of entree into a building owner focused business. And then when we got into the commercial side of things as reps, and it's a big, big part of our revenue, we called on everybody. We called on architects, we called on roofers, we called on distributors. And it was really how we got to where we're at, right? But our biggest focus then was building a brand, right? Not our brand, but building other people's brands, right? And so Versico would be a great example of that. When I took that line on, they had $30,000 in sales in the entire state.
Wow.
They've been bought by Carlisle. They were the old Goodyear roofing division. And we took that line on, and they just let it die for 5 years in Texas and sort of gave it all to the Carlisle guys. We took it over, and we took it from 30,000 in sales to well over 60 million in sales. So 30,000 to 60 million, we built a brand, and we grow exponentially with that. Well, we did that with most of our brands. We're not a job hopper. A lot of reps will take on a line, they'll get fired, or they'll jump to the next line. We've been with Versico for 25 years. 25 years. We never dropped. We never dropped them. Carlisle, all of our marquee brands, we built them from the ground up. So when we called the company market makers, our pitch was to go to a manufacturer and say, hey, our name says it all. We will make a market for you. You guys are not successful in this market. Let us help you grow this brand and build name recognition and followers. That's what we did. I don't need that anymore. I don't need any more manufacturers. Like, we turn around, we say, nope, we don't want to rep you. Every day we get an offer to rep a manufacturer, and we have to tell them no. Not because we don't want to, we just physically can't take on any more lines. We have a hard time keeping everybody happy. And so our focus changed to calling on building owners and architects, and started driving specs and being able to bring our contractors leads, and that's what we do different than other manufacturers, is that we're sort of, I hate to say it, but our name as the brands that we have were not the marquee brands. They are very quickly becoming marquee brands now. So my focus now, when I call on a building owner that owns 1,000 buildings in the United States, I can't get through the gatekeeper when I call and say, this is Ian with Market Makers, because I'm calling somebody in New York City that owns assets all over the world, and they're thinking I'm trying to sell them stocks and bonds, right?
Yep.
And so we came up with the name Market Makers. I was fascinated. I always wanted to be a stockbroker when I was a kid. And when you bring a company public, you call it making a market. You're a market maker. You bring them as a public company, you bring it to market to the stock exchange. And I was fascinated with that. I wanted to be Gordon Gekko, right? So
I wanted to be Donald Trump at one point in my life. So I totally understand. I respect that. And that is a terrific reason for doing it. And that makes perfect sense. You've evolved and shifted and spent that time building those brands, and you've done an amazing job. Like you said, Versico, Karnak. I've got a Roser sample board about 3 feet away from my foot right now that was sent by Nate. And I want to do some stuff with that because I think, I've seen how you've worked over the years. And one thing that really impresses me is how you do help the contractors. And that's how I met you years ago in College Station. I used to work over there for a company, and you would come in and teach us about all your product lines, and were very helpful, very willing to step in and even help guys like me who at that point were brand new in residential and didn't have a clue what the hell we were doing. And I've always really appreciated that. And I think that you as the leader really do a terrific job of conveying what your culture is and your attitude towards being a leader in the industry and being a person who gives back. It trickles down to everybody on your team. And I'm going to take a minute real quick because I want to give a huge shout out, not just to Nate, but also to Jay Rodriguez and also Bart. I've met all these guys over the course of time, and J Rod, you could call the guy up, and I've never bought anything from you guys before, but he will meet me on a building and he'll do whatever he can to help. And I really appreciate that, because to me, it shows you are trying to help people. And it's not just, hey, screw you, my biggest guys are going to get these deals and we don't have time for you. We'll send one of our little lackey guys or whatever. Y'all don't have any lackeys. So I really appreciate the way that you are involved with the contractors. I love the way that you guys are just readily available. I mean, I reached out to you and asked if you'd be on my podcast, and here we are. And I mean, I don't really feel like I provide much value to you. So I appreciate that sincerely. One day I will provide value, and this will be one of those moments that we remember. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, man. And thank you for the kind words. You know, the thing about it is, you know, I look back on my career and the guys that I work with today that are big boys, right? And I remember, I'll never forget this, because I called on a company in Bel Air, and the guy that was the shingle rep before me gave me a 3-ring binder, and he wrote up a profile on every person that he called on.
Nice.
His name is Steve Pavey. He's the Hunter rep in Dallas now. He's semi-retired, but he has one line, Hunter panel. He's a great guy, and he was a good mentor to me. And I remember reading it. It said Keith Martin, working out of his house in Bel Air right now, says he's going to be the largest industrial roofer in Houston. Guess what?
He's there.
The largest, owns 2 city blocks in Bel Air now. They built an unbelievable, iconic brand. And I can give you 100 other stories like that. Guys that I called on that were residential guys working out of their house that are now $100 million roofing companies. Privately held, no private equity money. They're running $100 million in sales, 92 employees. And I knew them when they were selling residential out of their house, and I don't believe in getting the big boys. I believe in helping my contractors become big boys. And there's nothing I like better than having somebody that's an old school guy kind of talk shit about a contractor who has now passed them up. Because
that doesn't happen, does it?
You just say, man, these guys are not who you think they are anymore. If you take people for granted and you don't give them respect, they will eventually leave you in the dust. And, we always try and work harder than our competition. And we encourage our contractors to not get lazy, not get complacent, and don't get arrogant. When you lose that humility, you're going to get crushed the way it is. And I've seen it time and time again.
Absolutely. This industry is filled with that. And I've been in this for 26 years myself. So it's been quite the journey. And I'm like you. I think back to some of the people that I've known over the years that started off in small positions and have kind of worked themselves through the industry. I look at myself and it's kind of a weird story. I mean, I started one day just because I was mad at my drywall job. I pulled into a roofing supply company and I took a job as a truck driver, and I roof loaded houses for 15 years almost. And it was a conveyor truck, and I was throwing bundles on the back of the conveyor.
Hardest job in the world, by the way. We were the guys that were the first people in distribution to bring roof loading to Houston, and everybody hated me for it, but my roofers loved it.
Exactly. And you know what? I did it for so long that it was just, it was a part of me and who I was. And through that, you build these relationships. As the truck driver, I would go out and meet all the owners in the job sites and such. And when they decided to open a branch of that company in North Carolina back in 2010, I got an offer to go be the branch manager of a roofing supply company. Wow. So I took that. I started a branch from scratch with one other guy that I met literally at the front door the day we started. And when you do things like that in this industry, you get to meet some pretty cool people, because taking those risks, there are definite, there are levels in this deal. There are people that are willing to basically throw themselves out. I tell everybody, I'll jump off the diving board before I check and see if there's water. And sometimes that's not good. You know, you can hit your head and kind of bump yourself up a little bit. But if you take the jump and it's filled with water and you land it perfectly, man, some of the opportunities you can get just by taking chances. So that's kind of what I wanted to start leaning back towards, is your earlier days in this industry, getting started with market makers. You kind of hit on it a little bit, but it's not something that you just snap your fingers and say, hey, you know, I'm going to make this thing happen. You talked about building these brands over the years and kind of not taking on the big names. That's awesome, but that's a challenge, I'm sure. So let's talk about that, Ian. Tell me about how it was when you first got started getting out there and getting these names, and, you know, what kind of things you had to do to get yourself established.
So I'll tell you kind of my crazy evolution. And so for me, as a shingle rep, I kind of peaked. I gotten as much as I could. I was, you know, you're working for big companies like that. There's a ceiling. Okay. Yep. And as a shingle rep, when you're making more than your bosses are, they're going to figure out a way to tweak your commission schedule so that you make less.
You don't say.
We're going to pay you more on this. You might sell one of a month. We're going to pay you less on what you sell every day. And they just find ways to tweak it. And it's just the corporate way. And so after about 4.5 years, I was making more than my boss, and I knew it was time to move on. And I hated it because I love the culture. A company called GS Roofing Products that got bought by Certainteed in 1995. And it was the greatest company in the world because they taught me how to be an entrepreneur. They treated us like we were literally top level businessmen. We knew what it cost to make a shingle. We knew what the margin was expected of us. We had 100% pricing authority. We did not have to call and ask for a quote. They said, this is what we expect of you. Run it like your own business. Spend your money wisely. It was literally like a MBA in 4 years of being in the field. It was incredible.
But when it was paid to do it, that's the best part.
100%. And then I got a company called US Intech. And US Intech was a commercial manufacturer who wanted to make modified shingles. They tried to hire myself and Rob Beckerman. And both of us went over there. I made a package deal for both of us. He backed out at the last minute and stayed with Certainteed. When I went to my mailbox the next day, there was a contract in the mailbox. And I opened it up. It was the first FedEx envelope I'd ever gotten in my life. And I opened it up. I looked at the contract and I read it. And it was for twice what I asked for. And Danny Adair, who is the CEO of US Ply now, was the CEO of US Intech, which was a public company, by the way. And he said to me, I said, Danny, I appreciate this, but you sent this contract. And remember, Beckerman didn't come, and this was the amount I agreed to. And he goes, verbatim, he says, I know, kid, in a big Fort Worth accent, he said, you undersold yourself. Sign it and send it back. I signed that contract, I sent it back. We built a modified shingle plant on the Port of Houston, ended up selling the company to GAF. I did not want to work for GAF. I did not want to go back to that sort of big company, you know, don't compensate your salespeople because once they make too much money, you know, we could hire 4 young guys out of college for that. And that was the mentality. I said, I will not work for them. Danny let me out of my contract. And so when he let me out of my contract, I went into the distribution business, was supposed to build a company. It was called Pan Am Distributing. They were existing 11 branches. Once I hit a certain metric, I was supposed to get 25% of the company. The owner sold it a week before I was supposed to get my stock and said, we don't have a contract, sue me. And that's really what happened. He said I had to do what was best for my family. And it was just a bad deal. And I learned a really good lesson there because I got paid well when I was there. But I learned that if it ain't in writing, it doesn't matter, you know. And I was naive. I trusted. I'm a handshake guy to this day. But now I get a handshake. And if it's a real deal, we're going to put it on paper, you know. And so you learn lessons from that. So I spent some time in distribution after that. But when the Pan Am deal ran its course, at that point, I was 100% sure I don't want to be a minority owner. I want to own it myself. If I have partners, they will be partners that I bring in, give them an opportunity to earn stock or buy stock. But I will always have the majority of the company, because if I fail, it's on me. If I succeed, it's on me. But I can't succeed if I don't have people that are a part of it. And I'm proud to say that Bart has ownership in my Dallas branch now. Ray Wilcox now. We bought their firm, and he and his dad's out now, retired. He owns a big portion of Dallas now. I still own majority of all those branches. Jay and I are partners. He's a minority partner, but he's the second largest shareholder, and he's got a piece of all of them. And none of those guys put in a dime of their own money. I made them partners based upon the sweat equity and the performance they put into the business. And we're a family, and sometimes families fight, but we all work and pull in the same direction. And so when I decided to start the rep firm, it was just, I want to do my own deal. My funnest job I ever had by a mile. And by the way, I have to put one part in there. I went to Chicago in 1999 and I worked a hailstorm. And in 11 days, I sold $5 million worth of residential roofs. Wow. 11 days. And they couldn't build that in a year. And when I left, I had 5 million more contracts, and I gave them away 100%. I did not stay because I had a goal. I was going to sell $5 million. I was making 15% of the gross back then, but we were at huge margins. We were selling wood shakes, copper flashings, window beating. I mean, it was crazy, crazy claims. And so in that 1 year, I made $650,000, and I used that money to start my rep firm where I could take on, companies that didn't have really any existing sales. I remember my first commission check was like $127, and I just lived my life normal, and I had all that money saved up, and we started the metal fabrication company as well. We bought those machines. We had no debt. But I worked 365 days in a row, including Christmas, including New Year's, to be home in a year with that money in my pocket. And that was how I started. Most companies fail because they don't save and they don't have anything set aside to start up. And so you can't make it through the beans and rice phase.
That is so true. And I talk about that all the time on residential. You get a hailstorm and all of a sudden 50 new companies pop up. What do you guys do after that second roof that you've got your credit line maxed out at, and the insurance is holding your money? It's a brutal scenario, and it's tough to get in. And commercial is even harder, I've come to find over the course of time. But this is very interesting, and I really appreciate what you just said, because it's almost like you're reading my mind on this. 365 straight days of work, Christmas, New Year's, birthdays, Thanksgivings, countless hours, right? When I went to North Carolina, I was doing the same thing for like 2 years. I don't remember 2 years of my life in Charlotte, and it drove me nuts. I had left. The last day that I was there, I threatened to throw a customer through a glass door, and then I just walked out, and that was the end of my branch manager career. So I understand some of the stresses that go along with it. Yeah. But one thing that really, 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 really stands out about you is your family. And I know that you take great pride in the fact that you spend a lot of time with your family. Your kids are successful, doing amazing things. And one thing that really always stands out is I always see this, Ian's with his family. So let me ask you this. When you first got started, obviously you didn't have the kids, but you get a couple years in and your daughter was born, relatively early into your deal there. Yep. So that kind of changes your perspective on life. You go from doing the 365 and all that. And how did, that magical moment in life, how did that change the way that you viewed the way that you were going to do business moving forward, the way that life was going to be? And how were you able to find the split that you've got now early on? Or was it something that you guys had to sacrifice till, just relatively recently to get to?
Yeah, it was hard, but I always prioritize family. I think the difference really is not necessarily the amount of time that you spend with them, but the quality of time that you spend with them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Now I do incredible things with my kids, and I try to go see them whenever I can. And my daughter's in New York, and my son's 16 years old, and he's here. And I try and spend as much time with them as I possibly can. But I still work a lot. I'm a workaholic. But, when we are going on these 2-week trips to Europe, I'm 100% engaged with them, 100%. If I got to get up at 2:00 in the morning in whatever country we're in to catch up on projects and things like that, no one knows it, right? And I climb back into bed and wake up an hour later, whatever it takes. But the truth is, I am more present with them now than I ever have been. But I also kind of waited late to have them. I'm 56 years old. My son is 16. My daughter is 20. And so I was 35 before I had my first child, and it wasn't planned. I wasn't planning on having one until I was 40. Just sometimes God has other plans.
It happens.
Yeah, totally. But man, it's been a gift. But that also motivates you, and for me, it was no longer about me. It's like, I grew up a poor kid, right? My dad was enlisted in the Air Force for 30 years. He went as high as he could go as an enlisted guy, as a chief master sergeant. But it was lean years. I had 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us. My mom didn't work, and so it was, the guys supporting 4 boys on an enlisted man's salary. It was tough growing up. And so for me, I wanted so much more for my kids. My dad was a disciplinarian, and sports was my sort of refuge, and it taught me discipline more than anything. But I wanted my kids to have opportunities that I didn't have. I didn't want them to have to get, reduced lunch at school, and wear your older brother's hand-me-downs and that kind of stuff. And so that really helped me to say, hey, these kids are going to go to the best private school, and they're going to learn discipline, and they're going to understand the value of a dollar. But I don't want them to want for things either. That there is a fine line between giving them too much or giving them opportunities, but teaching them value in themselves, confidence, the way they carry themselves, and to set goals, if that makes sense. And so it's super important for me to have a strong relationship with my family. They come first, but I'm not the guy that's at every baseball game and every football game as much as I want to be. There are sacrifices that come with, giving them opportunities, to go to New York to college and to do all the cool things that they've gotten to do. There are going to be a game or 2 that I'm going to have to miss because Dad's away for business, and that's just realistic. You owe that to yourself, to your company, to them as human beings and as future leaders. You're going to have to miss some stuff. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with Raymond Little the other day from Perimeter Roofing over in Georgia, and he said the same thing. He sacrificed all that time when he was building the company and never went to any of his kids' events and things. And now that he's kind of gotten, over that hump and he's very successful, he takes a lot of pride in doing that. Yep. And I really appreciate that, because to me, I know a lot of people in this industry that are like completely obsessed with work, and it gets to the point where it'll make you crazy if you let it. And I've seen people snap just because they don't know how to have that balance, or it takes over their life. So seeing someone that's working on the level that you do is incredibly encouraging to someone like me, because excuse me, I start freaking out over something little, and then I think, well, here's all these guys that are handling all these problems, and they seem to be okay. So you're an inspiration to millions, my friend, and I appreciate you for that. You mentioned sports. I know you're a Houston guy. You're a big Houston sports fan. I see you at all the Astros games. I see you at the Texans games. It's a pretty good time in life to be a Houston sports fan. I grew up in Ohio, so I wouldn't know anything about having, winning professional teams or anything like that. But I came down here, and we used to go to the Astros when I worked over at America's Choice in College Station. We would do that trip once a year where we would get the bus and go down there and do all that. And you were at every single one of them with us. And I always thought that was really cool. And let's talk a little bit about it. You said 56, you've been in the Houston area for a while. it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows for the sports teams. You guys had Deshaun Watson before you had CJ Stroud. Life sucked a couple years ago, but now it's like things are starting to pick up. We're bringing some Buckeyes into the mix over here.
Yeah.
I think the Texans.
We got rid of our damn tickets. Our football tickets, we were so disgusted. I'll never forget. I was at the Houstonian Club, and we were at this cigar and whiskey event. And I'm sitting at a table, and directly behind me is Cal McNair, the CEO of the Texans. And I'm smoking a cigar, and someone said, "Hey, man, we need to go to a Texans game." And I didn't even realize he was sitting behind me. And I said, "Screw that, man. I'm done. I'm done with the Texans." I said, "The product they're putting on the field is not worth my entertainment dollar. And until they clean house and get rid of their coach and literally start over, I am not interested in being a." And I was an inaugural guy. I had an original PSL, and I got rid of it. Got rid of the PSL. Got rid of all the seats. I said, "I'm done with it." And he turned around and he looked at me like, "You son of a bitch." Like he was not happy with me. And I said, "Truth hurts."
Yeah, it is what it is. Get rid of Bill O'Brien. We didn't hire the guy.
Oh, he was terrible.
I knew that was your favorite coach. I had to throw that out there because I was at Ohio State, and I've been an Ohio State fan my whole life. You see my guy Brutus back here.
Yep.
And we used to beat up on Penn State. So when he came to the NFL, I was like, man, that guy, I don't see how he's going to succeed. And it looks like maybe as a talent scout, I've got a good set of eyes on that. So
yeah, I would say so. But man, the Stros, we're the biggest Astros fan, and I'm still I never quit being a Texans fan. I just could not give them my dollars anymore because it's expensive, and I don't mind spending good money for tickets. And we spend a fortune on the Astros, but everybody loves going to those games, including me. And they have one of the most well-run teams in all of professional sports. And people are like, "You can't get rid of that guy. Watch us." And they bring in these young guys, and every year we got some superstar that no one knew who he was a year ago, And I think that we just have a keen eye. I think we got a good owner, and I think he hires good people and is not afraid to make tough decisions. And I think that's part of business, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's universal across the board, right there. Good leaders bring in good people, bring a good culture, and do things the right way. I mean, that's the key to success.
Poor job over the years in our own company is I'm they always say be slow to hire and quick to fire. I've been quick to hire and slow to fire, and honestly, like as I get older, I start realizing that we can handle the stress until we find the right guy. And I want to go get guys, not have guys come to me. You know what I mean? I'd like to come to work for you. Generally speaking, guys that are worth having are not looking. You know what I mean?
That's the truth.
You got to take that sort of sports mentality and go get the winners. And so we've kind of changed our mentality a little bit. If a guy's unemployed, he's unemployed for a reason. Go find guys that are winners, that are employed, that just want a better opportunity. And so we've changed our mindset a lot over the last probably 5 years. And I think it shows in the quality of my team. The old guys that have been with me a long time, I saw that. I sought those guys already. But when you get busy, you think you're too busy to find the right guy, and then you're too busy to train that right guy. And my dad's famous thing was you got to slow down before you speed up. And I'm finally learning to slow down before I speed up. If there's a day that I got to spend the whole day in the office putting projects out and training people, I'm going to do that, where before I'd be like, just learn it the way I did. Go online. Here's a book. There was no online when I learned, but here, study it. Created all these cheat sheets. Look at them. People don't learn that way anymore. That's the sad part. We learn visually now.
Yeah, that's true. And there's no way that you can send someone out to train the way that we were trained. Like you said, I mean, I actually got really good training when I got into the contracting side, but I have seen so many disasters over the course of my career. And, right now, I think with the way residential is going, the way that the insurance industry is kind of changing, I think we're in for a big wave of screw ups based on the fact that people are not adapting to the way things are changing. And I actually just had a homeowner yesterday that I met. He had a $6,000 surface payment schedule taken out of his claim, and he knew nothing of it. And he said, well, the other roofer knocked on the door and told me all I had to pay is my deductible. And it's like, well, dude, that's what happens when you listen to some dumbass roofer that's just knocking on your door that hasn't been trained. And I think that we're going to see some issues moving forward with that. So my big thing is getting out of residential, getting into maybe doing a little transition. I'm doing some specialty metal work right now, getting really good at flashings and chimney crickets and dead valleys and things like that. And I'm going to try to market that to some of the local contractors. But let me ask you this, Ian, if a guy like me who's been around for a little while, I remember years ago, 2018 Christmas party for America's Choice Roofing. You were the last person I spoke to as I was walking out the door. And I remember this to this moment. It was at the pizza place. Yeah. And I walked out the door and I said, Ian, I'm going to do some commercial stuff and you're going to know who I am. And apparently you know who I am, but I ain't done any commercial stuff. So I want to get into this market. I'm sick of doing residential. I'm sick of doing insurance. I literally scrapped the entire roofing company last year. My partners and I separated. I went down to Florida and I worked with Lee Haight for a little while and did some stuff there. Came back. We bought the company. So now it's myself and I do have a partner who's over in Ohio. And my goal is I want to do something different. I don't want to be like every other roofer in town. So someone gets to this point. What do they need to do to break into commercial? How do they, besides standing outside begging?
Here's the best way to do it. And I will tell you, first and foremost, the most important thing that you can do, I do a seminar, I call it From the Leak to the Lifetime Client. Okay. And basically we teach contractors to quit stepping over, dollars trying to get the $1 million deal, right? Because when you're handling leaks, you basically are creating a repeat business with a client, okay? And you establish familiarity and you establish trust and you're solving their problems, right? And so it's so easy to get sort of, the romanticized part of the storm business because the dollars are really big and it's free money. It's not anyone else's money, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm getting this money, so I'm just going to take it and I'm going to transfer it back to you and you just put my roof back on, right? That's not the real world, right? It's just not. And I've been a big benefit of that. I couldn't have started my company with all those, without those big dollars that I made doing that. But it's not going to go on forever. You're seeing changes. My own house, I put the first roof on one of my own houses that wasn't something I built or flipped, on something I lived in just a month ago. Okay. And my claim came in and it was a joke. They ripped it apart. There was 3 different classifications on there, right? They had an A, B, and a C. And so they figured out a way to find about $6 or $7 grand that they could whack me for in 3 different coverage portions, right? And then the deductible on top of that. And I was able to beat them up and get it. I mean, for me, I know what it cost a roof, so it was not a big deal. And the guy that I had do it, I said, look, man, I'm not trying to make money off my roof. I don't know a dime on my house, so I got all the money at one time anyway. I said, I'm a builder. I'll build the fence. I have my guys do the fence. Here's what I'm going to do. But when everything's gone, I'm going to give you the rest of the money. I don't care. You made 42% margin on my house. I don't care. That's fine. I'm not trying to make money off of it. I don't even feel good about doing that. He's like, why aren't you just doing it yourself? I go, I want to do it myself. At the end of the day, I want to give back to people who give me money, right?
Yep.
These guys buy a ton of metal from me. I'm going to hand it over to you, right? And so I would tell you this: develop a relationship with people where you're doing leak repairs. Okay, I'm not talking about doing leak repairs on a 20 square house, but I would still do those too, right? Because again, that homeowner says, man, this guy's a genius. He fixed my chimney, had 6 other roofers out there. And he came and he said, well, look, this is what these guys are doing. They're slapping plastic cement on it. You need to retuck those chimneys and you need to properly seal those chimneys. And we had to do this or that or whatever, and you show them the difference, and they tell 100 people about you. But I will tell you this, the guys that I know that have been able to sell their companies for a huge number, okay, they're not stormers. You know, some of them have divisions that do disaster stuff, right? And that's the big thing right now in private equity is, you know, they're enamored with the margins that you can do storm work, right? But private equity is the next shiny thing, and there'll be something else. All these guys that think they're going to get rich, that window is closing. You might have 2 or 3 more years, and it's going to go away. I don't care what anyone says.
I know. I have a very, very detailed, what do they call it, conspiracy in my head as to what's going to happen. And people look at me like I'm crazy, but I've been through this a couple of times, so we shall see.
The insurance game is changing, and there's no way around it. I'm certainly don't have a crystal ball, but there's too many guys in it, right? And the insurance companies are doing everything they can to try and minimize the risk. You look at all the companies that have pulled out of Texas. That claim that I have on my house, that company's already pulled out. They're gone. The September, end of this month, they're no longer going to write in Texas. I was with farmers for 30 years. They no longer write in Texas. It's changing, and it's going to continue to change. And so that margin will continue to shrink. And there'll be a few smart guys that'll make deals with insurance companies. And some of these will be big private equity guys, and they'll say, okay, we can't make 58% margins on these jobs anymore, 65% margins. We're going to have to operate off a 30, 35% margin, you know, and that's just the way it's going to be. I don't know. That's my theory for what it's worth. And
I think it's worth a lot. Yeah. You know, and I think the same thing. I tell everybody, I think Home Depot is getting ready to become the biggest MRP / residential contractor, because why not? They just bought the thing that they were lacking the most, which was logistics and the ability to maintain that pace. So I don't know. I see it coming. I don't want to be caught in that mix. I had lunch today with a guy here in San Antonio that I just met today. And it was amazing because we were talking about this very thing. And he said, you know, these guys that don't see it coming, or even if they see it coming and they don't understand, they're going to get themselves caught up, and they're going to get behind, and they're going to, you know, ultimately get filtered out. So to me, I think it's the perfect time to get away from that. I don't want to do it anymore. It's not fun. I want to get into doing some commercial stuff and some high-end residential. And I think that's my future with Rio Blanco, I hope.
100%. Well, commercial is a great business if you focus on re-roof. Don't stay away from the construction. It's a race to the bottom. GCs build their backs on the roofers and all their jobs. It's just the pay is slow. You're holding you're holding back money for, you know, a year or more, you know, and it's just, they're going to hold 10% of your contract for a year. You know, I mean, that's your profit on some of these new construction jobs. Not worth it. But where you can make money in new construction is high-end residential, right? I have a customer, great example. He buys a lot of standing seam for us. And what I'd always tell a guy is, like, don't be afraid of anything. Don't be afraid of slate. Don't be afraid of standing seam. Don't be afraid of clay tile, because you got us. We'll show you how to do it. Like, we'll do your takeoff. We'll show you what to look for. We'll show you the pitfalls, and we'll hook you up with installers that know how to do it. And it's not difficult if you're with the right installers and you have the right partner in manufacturing, right? Find somebody that can be a mentor to you, somebody that has helped other people grow, and they'll hook you up with the crews, right? Everybody wants to get certified. I want to be certified, set me up. Well, if I give you these blueprints, could you do a takeoff on it right now and give me a good material list? No. Okay, you're not ready. Okay, let me hook you up with somebody that doesn't mind doing that for you, that will do the labor for you until you're ready and you learn it, because you set someone up for failure by being that guy that goes, oh, you got a 500 square job, you're set up. No way, I won't do it. You know, because I'm setting you up for failure, and I'm setting myself up for failure, because those jobs are not going to go well, and it's going to reflect on me with my good contractors who are certified, that have progressed to a level of excellence that is equated with the brand, right? But I started in that same place with those guys where I said no, and 3 other manufacturers said yes. And I said no, but I'm here for you. I'll help you get where you want to go. If we take this path, you'll be glad you took it, right? And some of them are like, you're an asshole. You're too difficult. I'll just go somewhere else. And I'm like, that's not it at all. I just want to help you be successful, and I don't want to go down with the ship, and
Yeah,
that's just me being candid,
yeah, it's tough love. I mean, like you say, you're putting your name and your reputation out there, and just because I want to work with you doesn't mean that I'm going to make you look good. I might be the biggest idiot in the world, but I want to work with you. Well, it doesn't work that way, and I can definitely respect the fact that you don't just certify anybody, because I know that there are manufacturers that do. And that's usually when you start finding problems. You start realizing that these guys have no business doing what they're doing. And, it's very charming that you don't have to have licenses to be a roofer, right? But it's the biggest freaking nightmare in the world for some people. And I can appreciate the fact that quality is more important to you and your group than just throwing numbers out on the board or getting more contractors into your roster there. And that speaks volumes for who you are. So, Ian, we're getting down here. I told you it's going to be an hour or so. So we're at 46 minutes. I got some more stuff that I want to discuss. So I'm going to try to maybe speed it up. But if it goes a little over an hour, I apologize.
I told you, my dog's the only one that's going to be missing me. We're fine.
Well, I respect your dog. I mean, I'm taken away from your best friend. But you talk a little bit about your metal company as well. And this is something I wanted to discuss with you. Tell me a little bit about that. You're serving the Houston market with metal fabrication, coils. What kind of metal work are you doing?
We do 8 profiles of standing seam. We do ACM panels. We route them here in-house. Wall panels, just strictly fabrication. So we're manufacturing panels. We're shipping them to contractors and distributors. That's all we do. We don't install anything. We would never compete with our customers. And so that's kind of our niche. We're sort of the little guy that competes with the Barrages and the MBCIs and the McElroys of the world. Although we're a Barrage licensee, so we have a Barrage machine, so we can run T panels, and we have a good relationship with Barrage. We're like Switzerland, right? We're too small. Yeah, we're too small to really bother the MBCIs of the world and people like that too much. And we buy a lot of coil from McElroy, so we're a customer of theirs more than we are a competitor, and that's who we buy the majority of our coil from. But we're even an elevate fabricator. We can manufacture all of their warranted profiles. So even though I'm the Versico rep, I'm friends with the Firestone guys, and we can fab their panels. We're working on something right now to do the same thing with Peterson. So we're kind of like the Switzerland of the metal business. I would probably compare us in some way to kind of Central Texas Metal up in Seguin and Austin. And we used to be their rep, and that kind of prompted me to go out on my own and do my own thing. But I still have a great friendship with those guys, and we work together sometimes, So that's kind of what we do. But we've got a metal shop. We're on the northwest side. Well, we're not in the northwest anymore. That's where Northwest Metal name came from. We're right near Continental Airport now. I bought a new facility here about a year ago, and we have multiple computerized brakes and multiple roll formers, and we even make half-round gutters. So I didn't want to be in the gutter business per se, but half-round's high-end, and we like high-end products and niche products. And again, most of our customer base are not the old-school sheet metal guys. They're the guys that want to break into metal and be really metal-centric contractors, because there's a lot more money. And classic example, there's a guy that is a big customer of ours that he ended up splitting with his partner, and he's gone out on his own now, and he's moving to the hill country, and been doing on average 2 to 3 roofs a month in the hill already. And he's such a following that he's like, I bought a house there and I'm moving there and I've already got business there. We're already making money, and he's making more money doing 3 metal roofs a month than he was selling 5 residential shingle roofs a week, you know. Yep. I mean, you know, that are non-storm related, right? So, you know, he's gotten a buzz for it. He likes it. He's good at it. We hooked him up with his labor, both here and in Central Texas, because we know the crews, because everyone wants us to do it turnkey and we refuse. But we've gotten to know the roofers. And so the best labor comes through our door, and we go out and we look at their work and we say, we'll put you on the roster, but you deal directly with the contractor. We don't take a nickel from you. I don't want anyone calling saying you did a crappy job, because we don't take anything from you. We're just going to give your name out. And the moment you don't do right by our contractors, you're off the list, and we'll bring a new guy on. And so these guys get all their labor work through our customers, and we're able to provide, you know, a takeoff for our contractor. And when it's time to do the job, that sub goes out and drops the tape on it, gives us a cut list, and we go out and either run on site or package it in our shop. So that's a good business for us. We're an ES1 fabricator, so we're one of the few ES1 certified fabricators. So we can make, you know, engineered, tested metal, which is something that very few sheet metal companies offer as well. So in commercial, the code per IBC now is metal must be ES1. I would say less than maybe 5% of the contractors out there actually obey that, and they get away with it. But because there's no checking on it. But that is required code on commercial to use ES1 metal.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We all just learned something, and that is exactly what Keepin' It Rio is all about: teaching and learning and having a good time. So I have got this is my favorite part when we start winding down the episode, because I get to ask these crazy questions now. And for a guy that's been in the industry, like you said, over 30 years, one of the few people I know that's actually been in it longer than I have. In my career, I've seen some pretty crazy shit. I'm not going to lie. I've been in residential. I was in distribution. Let me ask you this, Ian, in your career out there on the job sites, this is a twofold question. Number one, the biggest job that you and your team have helped take on in your career. And part B is, what's the biggest disaster that you've had to resolve, fix, something that's gone terribly, terribly wrong that nobody foresaw, that you know, the end of the world is near, and you know, now it's just a distant memory, but at the time it was like, oh dude, we're done. Tell me a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah, I got a couple doozies for you. As far as the biggest job, I would say I'm on it right now. I've been involved in a project with a major company. It's based out of Taiwan. Their corporate office in America is in New Jersey. And I got involved with these people about 6 years ago on a project in Houston where we designed a wind ballasted roof system. So it's called vacuum seal, or V2T. And it's a loose laid system where you have engineered vents that create negative pressure. And it was a Loadmaster deck. And if you don't know what that is, it's a glorified deck, right? And so you got very light gauge metal, like 29 gauge metal with sheetrock that sits in these channels. And it's like being on a trampoline. And it's an engineering marvel, in fairness, but it's garbage. And there's only 3 contractors in every city that can do it. For those guys, it's great, because there was a lot of this in the 70s and the 80s, not so much anymore. And not that it doesn't work, but it's very difficult when you have to get to re-roof it, right? And so only 3 contractors can work on those decks in almost every city. And so it's a very expensive proposition. And so we ended up flipping these guys over to a wind ballasted system, which allows you a 3rd roof and still meets code. And the reason being is it's not point loaded. You're not screwing into anything. You're screwing into verticals, and you've got engineered. It's called a suck system, the roof that truly sucks. Well, we saved them about $1.5 million on that 3,500 square job. And my contractor made good money. He was laying up 400 squares a day on that job. And it got us in with this company. Well, we're in progress right now. We've been on this since last year. And when it's all said and done, by the end of this year, we will have roofed over 35,000 squares on one property. So
that's a beast right there. That's what they call a whale in the industry.
3.5 million square feet of buildings that will all be re-roofed before the end of this year. So that's the one that I'm probably most proud of. And we've invited a very small group of contractors to bid those jobs. And it's added a lot of value for them. But, you know, it's just entrenched our position with the building owner now, and we work with them all over the country. And so that's when you do shit right and you bring in the right people, good things happen. So that's probably the biggest project I've ever been involved in. It is, without question, the biggest project I've ever been involved in. As far as the biggest nightmare that I've ever been involved in, I would say there's probably a couple of them. One was storm related. And so Stormer will appreciate this. And I will not mention names, but what I will say is we had a customer that was in Florida, and it was that time where we had all those hurricanes, 10 hurricanes all at the same time. And it was on the coast. It was a crazy, crazy time. And we were shipping. I was very big in the tile business back then too. We had a partner in Miami, and we had a facility in Florida, and we were big, big, big in the clay tile business. And tile was really, really short. You couldn't get it. And concrete was running, you know, a year and a half out literally on deliveries. No, everybody was at capacity. People didn't care what it cost. They just wanted to get those roofs dried in, and people couldn't wait 8 months for tile. You dry in a roof, and the underlayment back then had either a 90 or 120 day. There was one polyglass had 180 day exposure. Well, a lot of those dry-ins were going past 180 days. And so what would happen is guys would start going, well, we'll take clay. We don't care what it costs. So we were supplying all this clay tile. And we had one customer in particular that owed us, they were doing so much, they were buying truckloads of copper from us and clay tile. Whatever we could get them, they were buying. And it got so bad, they were buying so much that I put an employee in their office just to manage their inventory. And stuff was coming in because guys were just pulling up with dump trucks and throwing a pallet of copper in the back of it. And so I saw bad things happening there. Well, in the process of 1 week, they bought $600,000 worth of material from me in a week. Okay. Mind you, their credit limit was only $200,000.
I've been there.
A week. And what ended up happening was they went bankrupt. They closed on me. And they ended up owing me $600,000. And we were pretty much looking at having to close the business. I mean, it was, what are we going to do? And my partner at the time was a bigwig, had a lot of real estate holdings. And kind of a crazy thing happened. I was devastated, to say the least. Yeah. And we ended up, my partner went to our banker and said, hey, I need you to work with us. And they put us on a note, and crazy thing happened. We paid down that note about $200,000, and we paid it as quick as we could. And we just didn't want that monkey on our back. So every dime we made went right back to paying that note off. But it was a stretch, and we did without. And what ended up happening was, some crazy reason, my partner had been involved in a real estate deal, an industrial center, with one of the guys that owed us money from this company. And that building got bought by a real estate investment trust out of California. And that guy's share of that sale was $400,000. So we'd already paid off 2, and we got back the 4. It was like 7 years later, but we got back the 4.
Nice.
And it was like, we just said, we're taking it. You know, that's just the way it is. And we did, and he knew he owed it to us. And so he never fought us on it, you know, which kind of surprised me. because technically we couldn't do that. You know, I mean, it was a completely separate business deal, but at least he had the honor, even though it was years later and he thought he got away scot-free. The truth was he was such a bad business person that I honestly think he forgot that he was a partner in that real estate deal. You know, because when some of these guys are rolling, you know, and flashing all their money and their cars and all this cool stuff, they're spending every dime they make, and they're investing in things they forgot about with people that maybe weren't the most ethical people in the world to begin with. And so, you know, at the end of the day, they forget about it, you know. And for every great, there's so many great, amazing role models in this business, but there are also a lot of absolute turkeys who present themselves as something that they're not. And it's all flash, you know, and no substance. And so we need more leaders. We need more people that are good role models, that teach the right way to do things, lead by example.
I could not agree with you more on that. I think that our industry really is a beautiful thing because, like you say, there are so many people that are willing to just invest in others. I get probably 15 texts or calls a week from random roofers all over the country just asking, you know, what would you do in this situation? Or can you help me with this? I take a lot of pride in that because to me, it's like, you know what? The fact that people would even consider me as someone that would be able to help them is a huge honor. But being able to give back after all this time and everything that I got from this industry, my biggest thing now, you know, my company is very small. It's me and I've got a couple crews and we're just doing specialty work. I'm doing a lot more consulting and things like that. But it's the people that are willing to give and aren't looking. I get a lot of shit for this podcast, Ian. I'm not going to lie to you. My intentions are very pure with the podcast. I like talking to people and getting to know their stories. And, you know, I've had not just roofing people, I've had freaking professional wrestlers, hot sauce chefs, magicians. I have had people from all over the world, literally. But, you know, there's always going to be that element that's like, oh, you're a douchebag. You're just trying to be popular. Or you're trying to be a guru or whatever. The reality is, yes, I've been paid many times for my services when I go to help people. The reality is I never ask anybody for the money. They give me the money. They force me to take the money. Right. And I think there's a huge difference between doing things from the heart and then, like you say, people that have been in the industry 2 years that are now sales guru trainers or teaching people how to do stuff that they've never done before. And the one thing about me is I won't bullshit anybody. I don't know how to build a $30 million company. I've never done that. I know how to train $1 million sales reps. I've done that a bunch. I know how to be $1 million plus sales rep. I know how to, you know, work those equations with homeowners. I understand the psychology, but you're never going to find me saying, hey, you know, reach out to me today and I'll put your commercial roof on for you. Right. People need to stay in their lanes, and you make a very good point about that. And I just wanted to kind of go on my soapbox there for a minute about the people that are hating on me for my podcast. But
I don't understand it because, like, this is the one thing that I don't understand. Like, I think you do a good job. You do, and you have that DJ voice, by the way.
It's the microphone.
Yeah,
all day.
I don't know about that, but no, you just you carry yourself well. You actually gotten quite good at podcasts. I've watched you evolve, you know, from the beginning to now. And you're pretty polished. You know, I got to give you credit for that. And you know, as far as, like, you know, these self-proclaimed gurus, you know, it's laughable to me. You know, and here's the thing: you will never hear me call myself a guru. In no way, shape, or form have I ever said that. And when people say that to me, it makes me uncomfortable.
It's cringe, right? Jim Johnson called me an influencer one day, and I was like, dude, don't ever say that, because that's not my intention. And if people are getting influenced by me, you guys got problems. Trust me. I'm good on the surface, but I don't even trust me on some things. So yeah, there's a level of bullshit to it all, isn't there?
And I have a level of expertise, and my job is to teach other people what I know. And there's a personal gain in me, and that if I teach someone to elevate their business, my products are going to grow those guys. It's funny you mentioned it's you know, just you and a couple guys. And MMI, Market Makers Incorporated, when I started, MMI also stood for me, myself, and I.
Right.
Straight up. I'm not bullshitting you. You know, I go, what's MMI? Well, it stands for Market Makers Incorporated, but right now it stands for me, myself, and I. Let's change that together, right? That was my pitch. You know, it's just, hey, help grow. I'm going to help you grow. Let's grow together. And I've grown with my customers over 35 years. The guys that I started with now are leaders in this business and in distribution, and, you know, guys that, you know, tinker with SRS, you know, look what he's done. And so many of these guys that I started with, Mark McDonald at SRS, and, you know, he walked away with an insane amount of money after this last sale. And I hired him in the mid 90s to work for Pan Am. And that guy just has that it factor. But it's so gratifying to watch these guys, you know, become multimillionaires, you know, and change the whole face of this industry. And there was a time we were just a bunch of wet behind the ear kids with mullets up trying to sell roofing, you know, and it's fun, you know, to watch that evolution. And we want to see the next generation do the same thing. You know, that's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about, my man. And I'm here to help with the next generation too. I want to be part of the next generation. I feel like I've still got a good 25 years in me. I probably don't, but I feel like I do. And I say if, I promise you, I tell everybody that's on my podcast, 1 million people are going to see this episode. It might be 150 years from now, and we might be way gone off this planet, but you and I are going to contribute to 1 million sets of eyes. So if somebody in our industry is watching this now, they're over in the Houston market even, and they're like, man, you know, this guy Ian seems pretty cool. I wouldn't mind doing some business with these guys because I'm trying to get into some other things. What's a good way for a contractor to get, you know, on your radar? Maybe not you specifically, but your company. I don't want you giving out your phone number to the, you know, these idiots will be calling you. But, you know, if someone's watching this and they want to get in and they want to, you know, get a little tutorial, maybe learn some stuff, come to one of your trainings and eat a snow cone and get a little tipsy. What's the best way for that to happen?
Go to the website, thebest.com. And it walks through all of our services, what we do. We do a lot of trainings here too. So, you know, we have a training center here at our shop here. So it's a dedicated training center. We do hands-on stuff. So we do heat weld trainings here. We do 101s here. We do metal certification programs here. We do Carnac trainings here, repair trainings, all those kind of things. You know, and we believe that whether you use our product or someone else's product, there's a right way to do things, right? And I'll leave you with this: the most important thing, and we don't have to stop right now, but my point is, quit walking away from small deals, because the one thing that the guys that I know who have made it next level have done it by building relationships, right? And it's not about selling that one transaction. It's about building a relationship with that building owner, even if it's a homeowner, right? It's, you want to do every roof that homeowner ever does for the rest of their lives and every member of their family's roofs. And there's too much transactional selling in our business. Take the money and run. And that's why we don't have generational roofing companies anymore, you know, because there's not that planting those roots. And residential is a great business, right? I'll give you an example of a company that is probably one of the greatest hybrid residential companies that I see in Houston, and that's Am Still Roofing, right? You know, I've watched Sam Still. I knew him since he was a little kid, and his dad had a niche in the Memorial area and did an amazing job for decades, started in like 1974. And Sam goes to college, comes back to work for his dad, and now he's elevated it. You know, he uses modern advertising methods, social media and searches and all that crap that's above my head, right? But he also did a fair amount of storm work, but they do so much retail business at a high margin. Schulte, you know, would be a great example of somebody who's built an incredible bid. They're twice as much as most people, Brian College mentioned, and they're booked up for 3 months in advance. And I knew David Schulte. He lived in a single wide trailer in Alvin, Texas. And he's a multimillionaire who's now retired, and he's younger than I am.
Right.
He doesn't
Pretty
even come
good
to our
life.
business anymore, you know? And so, you know, whatever you do, commit, but the re-roof side of it is where it's at 100%, whether it's commercial or residential. And in the commercial business, if you're not willing to do the repairs, you will never be successful in the commercial industry. Leak to the lifetime client. It's the only way you do it is by servicing the bad shit, the showing up within 2 hours of a leak because it's pouring into a building, and using Carnac 19 Ultra to do a wet repair. Those are all things that will create a brand, create trust, and build clients for you forever. Most guys aren't willing to do that. They only want the home runs. They're not willing to take the base hits.
That right there, fans, is what's called multi-million-dollar advice. And I highly recommend everybody listen to that because, well, no, don't everybody listen to it. Some of you guys keep doing that other stuff, and I got you over here. So this has been an amazing episode, Ian. Like I said, I appreciate you so much. We've known each other for many years, but never have been able to sit down and talk like this. I thank you so much for taking the time. And next time I'm in Houston, I'm going to look you up, and we're going to go grab a bite to eat or something like that. And yeah, I'm going to do some metal work with you in the future as well. And I'm going to get some commercial stuff going. So I really sincerely appreciate you taking the time. For everyone, again, that watches Keepin' It Rio. Oh, one thing I do have to say, I forget this every single episode. I have to thank my sponsor, which is Roofer. Thank you guys, roofer.com. The Roofer CRM is absolutely amazing. I use it for my roofing business, and I love everything about it. So thank you to Roofer. Thank you to everybody that's watched the first 179 episodes. Wow. 180, I think today is probably number one in my heart. So we're going to keep getting better with it. And I appreciate your time, Ian. I appreciate everybody watching. Before we check out, the corniest tagline in the history of anything is, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you.